In the past, Clinton County, Missouri was the western edge of the United States. Situated between two emerging cities, Kansas City and St. Joseph, Clinton County benefited from their growth. The Pony Express, the Gold Rush, and Western migration brought people through the county, but the population that settled here put it on the map. Plattsburg became the beef capital of the world. Lathrop was the major supplier of mules for the Boer Wars and World War I. 5 railroads crisscrossed the county, and the nation's first north-south highway ran through Cameron, Plattsburg, and Trimble on its way to Kansas City. Clinton County was home to David Rice Atchison, president for a day, James Harvey Birch, Missouri Supreme Court judge, Willis J. Wynn, president of the Cleveland Federal Reserve, and James Marshall, early leader of the Manhattan Project. Here are more family histories of Clinton County.
My name is Estil Williams. I was born May the 25th, 1930, in a 2-story house beside a dirt road. And apparently it didn't rain that day because a Dr. Duncanson come out from Lathrop and delivered me. My parents were Mervyn and Beatrice Williams, and they married in 1917. And I have a picture of the first house they built, which is at the top here. It was a small house, probably about 24 foot square. And I never was told, but I'm sure this was just a plan until they got their present home built. But after the house went up, they used that as a garage, and it was my dad's workshop, and I well remember it. In fact, it was there until 1949, and I helped tear it down. And this is the way this apparently was brand new, because you notice there's no shrubbery or anything planted yet. Now here we had spirea bushes in front, and here's a picture of the old house out here, which stayed there for probably from 1917 through 1949.
Okay.
And this was called a pre-cut house, and normally it was called a Montgomery Ward house. However, there was other companies that sold it, and I have some Popular Mechanics that were my dad's, and they run from 1913 through 1916. And this company advertised inside to the front cover, and they were a very modern house for this time. They had central air, and they had central plumbing. I never had to go to the outhouse when I was growing up. We had running water, we had heat, and the prices, it quotes here, for this house is less than $1,000. And some of the other books I looked at, they have them here from $635 up to $1,000. And I think this house here probably resembles, it's not the exact house, but it's a 2-story house. In 1925, my dad built a barn, and he was a builder himself. So he more or less put the house together, and he told a story that he no doubt probably saw the ad in the Popular Mechanics they took that these were being done in Wisconsin. So he took a train ride from Lathrop to Wisconsin and went through the plant. And he always said they had better lumber than he could buy locally. And so he ordered it. It came in on a train at Lathrop, and it was hauled out. He had a Model T truck, I assume he hauled it out, probably with horses, and I'm sure he had help, but had a basement under, and then in 1925 he built a barn, and the house and barn are still there today. We sold the farm and moved to town in 1996, but we sold it to a young couple, and it's on 272nd Street and 69 Highway. And the next picture I have is a picture of my mother and father standing in front of the house, in front of the spirea bushes. That was always a favorite spot to take pictures. And then the next picture is after my wife Jane and I, and we made some improvements to the house over the years. It wasn't insulated when I was a child growing up, and of course we insulated it and put new windows in it, and my dad kept it painted. He painted every 3 years, whether it needed or not, but it finally got weathered to where the paint wouldn't stay on, so we had vinyl put on it. And the next picture I have is a picture taken from the era of our farmstead. And we lived there from 1959 to 1996. And I put out a book that I'll show later on my 80th birthday, and this was the front cover, and on the inside of the front cover is I've always had a friend, a four-legged friend, and I have lots of pictures of my dogs. That covers my very beginning. And next I want to show my family. I was the youngest of four. My oldest sister was born in 1919, and this is a picture when she was 2 years old, and this is a picture when she was married, and she was married at home, and our house had an open staircase, so she came down the stairs to meet her husband-to-be, and she was married in the living room of the home. And then the next row of pictures is my other sister, Carolyn. She was 3 years older than I, and they went up to the Christian church in Latham, and I stood up with them. At that time, they were married in 1947. I was 17 years old, and then we went back to the house and had the reception. And my older sister and her husband stood up with them, and they got married. And this is a picture of my mother, and a picture of my sister, and a picture of her and I together, another picture of her and I, and a picture of her, and then this is a graduating picture of my brother Eugene. He was born in 1922. My dad's family, and I have a family history book, Williams Wanderers, and I would like to read a short version of my grandfather, Thomas James Williams. Came to America in 1952 with his family when he was 12 years old. They settled on a farm in Victoria, Illinois. Here, he grew to manhood. He farmed and taught school there. In the early 60s, he made a trip to California, and there being no railroads to the West Coast at this time, he went to New York City and took a ship to the Isthmus of Panama. Then he crossed the isthmus and took another ship to California. After remaining there for after 2 or 3 years, he returned to Illinois by practically the same route. In 1970, he came to Missouri, driving through with his team and wagon, where he taught school and farmed. He had married and brought his bride, and then they finally settled on a farm in Clinton County, Missouri, near Lathrop. And this is the farm that my wife and I lived on nearly 70 years. And of course, folks lived there from 1917 through 1958. They moved to town when Jane and I got married so that we could take the house. And I have a picture of my dad's family. He had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. And they all lived locally, and they had families. I had cousins, and this is the marriage license on my grandparents Williams, and they were married in July, it's the 24th day of August, 1871. And I also have a biography of the Bowman family. And they came by the way of England from Ireland. And I'm going to read a short version here. Here's a picture of my grandmother and grandfather. Vincent Bowman Jr. was born January the 19th, 1831. Elizabeth Calder, his wife, was born December the 28th, 1830. They were married November 16th, 1854, in Livingston County, Illinois. They lived in Marshall County, Illinois, until December 1865, when they moved to Hamilton, Missouri. This was at the close of the war, and the author says, I can well remember at that time it was no uncommon sight to see men going along the streets with their big 6-shooters strapped around them. Here they lived until 1970, when they moved to Lathrop. They had a lumber yard, and they soon disposed of his lumber business at this point and bought a farm about 9 miles northeast of Lathrop, where the family lived until all of the children were grown. And this is a picture of my mother's family. She had 5 sisters and 2 brothers. And I have a picture that was taken in 1938. My grandmother had passed away in 1933 with this picture. My grandfather is holding a cousin of mine that grew up next door to where I grew up. So I know this picture. She was born in March of 38, and this would have been in the summer of 38 because my grandfather's holding her, and I'm standing right next to my grandfather here. I would have been 8 years old at that time. I guess this probably would be about when I was 8 years old. And here's a picture of me and that says Cuddles and Tippy. I was lucky to hear stories about people that had to walk a mile and a half uphill in a snowstorm. Well, I lived about a half a mile. Our house is about a half a mile from the school. In fact, it was on the backside of our farm. And this is a picture of the Plainview Schoolhouse. And it's set on 69 Highway 3 miles north of 116. And I have a picture. I was in the 3rd grade here, and Strossie Gall Myers was our teacher, and I had her my 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and then she became the county superintendent here in Plattsburg, and she left, and I'm the one there with the era. And this is when I was in the 6th grade, 1942, and I probably I have a neighbor next door to me that's here. He was in the 1st grade, and I don't think any of the rest of them are living. And, what they call Clinton County Rural School Days here in Plattsburg, and all the country schools, 8th graders came in, and they had a program at the high school. And, one time, there was a lot of rural schools. My family was churchgoers, and we went to the Deer Creek Church, and this is a picture of the Deer Creek Church, and yeah, it was 10 miles south of Cameron, or about 3 miles north of our house. And it's set on a dirt road, and I remember one morning that it was in the spring, and I come up one of those morning showers, and it was a dirt road, and so the church was probably about 1/8 of a mile off of the highway, and people just started parking along the side of the dirt road. They took our shoes off and socks off and just walked to church. And there was times in the winter time when they'd cancel church, but I did this for my 70th year at this church. The country church closed during World War II. They didn't have a minister, and a lot of the congregation had gone to the service. I was helping with the war effort, but I now and still attend the Christian church in Lathrop, and I have my baptismal certificate, and I was baptized on the 25th day of 1945, which this month is my 75th membership at the Christian church in Lathrop. And here's a picture of my graduation picture. Graduated from high school. Traveling, I was very fortunate to be able to went to California twice, went to New Orleans, to the Mardi Gras, and to Florida, and it was with the guys. And when I was a sophomore in high school, I was 16 that year, and I had an opportunity to take over the chickens, the hens, and my mother had some double cousins who lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they would come back and visit, and they would just say the food tastes so much better, it was fresh, and so they conned me into shipping them eggs. Well, as a 16-year-old boy, it was quite a challenge, but I was in high school and was in FFA, so I used this as an FFA project. Every week I would get to Carl 1 day a week and bring 2 cases of eggs and bring them into Lathrop, put them on the depot, at the depot, and put them on the train. And I got 50 cents a dozen, and 2 cases each, 60 dozen, and I got a check for $30 every week. I probably had more spending money than any of the kids in school. And of course, that continued on until I got out of high school.
1958.
1958. I was still single, but they were city girls, and I was a farmer, and a lot of girls didn't want to be a farm wife, and I very well understood, farm life is a tough life, but one of my buddies was dating Jane, and we double dated one night. I was going with his cousin, and about a week afterwards, my date, she lived in Kansas City, and Happy Hollow out here, it had a kind of honky tonk, and it's a church now, so we tell our grandchildren we met at church, but it was actually a honky tonk, and so she asked me if I'd take her home, and I said, yeah, if you'll go out with me tomorrow night. So this was in October 1958, and here's a picture of her home, which is now not standing, but it was on the county line road south of Gower. And we were married in February 1959. And here's a picture of our wedding cake, and here's a picture of Jane and her 2 sisters, which are bridesmaids, and her folks and her grandma. And this is a picture of me and my family. And out of this, we had 3 sons, and they are now grown, of course. This is a picture. It was actually taken out behind our barn a time ago, and Lathrop had their centennial in 1967, and of course it was an exciting time. And, people was talking about having floats and things for the parade. So we wanted to have something, and I had a friend at Cameron that raised Shetland ponies. So I talked to him one day about buying a team of Shetland ponies, and Shetland ponies had been quite a lucrative business back earlier in the 50s, but they had lost their value, and he told me, he said, you can go out and pick out 2 ponies of your liking for $20, $25 a piece. So here's a team of ponies, and we built a covered wagon. And this is what we had in Lathrop Centennial Parade in 1967. And we had some friends that they wanted to have something, and so they bought 4 of the ponies and had a 4-pony stagecoach, and we built this stagecoach in my farm shop. And this was kind of a hurry-up deal because they decided about 2 weeks before the parade they wanted to do this, so we spent some midnight oil. And, we always tried to take a vacation. And after the Centennial Parade, we started having some costume classes in horse shows, and this is one of with our 3 sons that we had a costume class, and we went to Sedalia State Fair, we went to Des Moines Iowa Fair, buggy and the surrey on top. And when our boys was growing up, we spent a lot of time going to the Lake of the Ozarks. They played in the water, and then after they grew out and left home, we went to Branson, and this is a picture. We was at Branson on the Branson Bell, and this is Jane's sisters and my brother-in-law. And when I was 50 years old, I was pretty athletic when I was in high school. I played football and run track. But of course, when you get out of high school, you don't do anything. And our son Jeff, the middle boy, he was running track, and this is Jeff here in the middle. And he trained out on our road from our house over to the interstate, a mile and a half. So one night I told him that, wait a minute, I'd put my running shoes on and go with him. And I hadn't been doing anything, and I run over there with him. And of course, I run the dashes when I was in school, so I was even faster than he was. So I just went off and left him back to the house, took a shower, and ate my supper, and sat in the old easy chair for an hour or so. And when I got ready to get up and go to bed, I couldn't get up. My legs had frozen, and they had to help me to bed. And of course, the next day I was really sore, and I thought, gosh, if I'm getting this shape at 50, I need to start doing something. So I started running, and I run what they call 5Ks, 3.1 mile, and they fun runs. And I talked to a friend of mine, which was Joe Spaeth. He had the furnace business in Lathrop, and we had chickens. And we had our business that I'll tell about here in a minute. And that's a picture of us in front of our store. And then 1 year, Successful Farming Magazine sponsored a fun run in Des Moines, Iowa on the fairgrounds for farmers only. So I drove up and I entered the farmers only, and they had age brackets, and I was in the 50-year age bracket. And of course, we all had our ages on us, and I visited with a fella from Indiana that was in my age group, and he was a dairy farmer, and he was about 6'6", and he had a big stride. I couldn't keep up with him, but I come in second. So I decided that I would get in what you call the caged laying business, and we started out with, of course, I worked with the University of Missouri to learn the pros and cons of the business, and we started this in 1967, and it sure beat leaving home and working nights. And we put up a second chicken house in 1970. Then we had 6,000 laying hens, and also we started raising fryers, and we raised generally around 8,000 a year. And so we called it the Williams Farm Fresh Food. We also had beef and pork. And 1 year in 1976, we were Clinton County State Farm Family. We made the State Farm Family in 1976, and that's a family. And this was in our business in Lathrop. And this is our son. It's gathering eggs. They come home from school, and all our boys were very good workers, and they have all been very successful because they learned to start working pretty young in life. And this is Platt Clay Electric, and we made the story one issue, and I'll read some of it. It's Williams Farm Fresh Foods. It says the owners, Jane and Estil Williams, Platt Clay Electric members, started a family egg business in 1968 with 3,000 layers and added another 3,000 in 1971. In 1972, they started raising fryers and capons. What started as a small egg business has now bloomed into a retail outlet for their fresh farm products. Jane and Estil pride themselves in their years of experience of raising and selling only the best farm products available. For a bit of country eating where freshness makes the favor, we suggest you visit Williams Farm Fresh Foods in Lathrop. Now, after 61 years of marriage, this is our family. We had 3 sons. We now have 3 daughter-in-laws. We have 5 grandchildren and 5 granddaughter-in-laws and 7 great-grandchildren. I left it till the last because it's a story that it's a tragedy that I told about my brother Eugene Williams. He was in the Air Force, and this is a picture, and I think I showed it maybe, but and this is his crew. He was a pilot of a B-24 bomber, and as a little brother, he was my hero. But they crashed on takeoff on May the 8th, 1945, and they were all lost. And my brother's body is buried in Honolulu, Hawaii. And that's a picture of it. That's a picture of me visiting the grave. And I would like to close by saying that my belief is that physical fitness, taking care of your body, is one of the best things you can do for yourself. I don't want the old rocking chair to get me. And, I've enjoyed doing this, and I hope people will enjoy watching it.